Putting that on Do Not Disturb so you don't see or hear a bunch of buzzing from me. Buzzy, buzzy, buzz, buzz, buzz. What's the buzz out there? Today, it's Wednesday, Wisdom Wednesday. We're back with you. We got two cameras again. Let's see if we can actually get them to work. Watch this. Hey, there we go. I'm back. Don't you know? All right. Sorry, I was vibing. I like the music. As you can see, I got the dinosaur shirt on today. Why do I have the dinosaur shirt on today? I am going on a site visit today to see a customer, and I didn't want to wear any logoed material in here because I try to keep some of my life separate, and I don't want anybody thinking that the opinions of me are the opinions of we. It's kind of an important thing to me here at the show. So let's talk about team buy-in. How can you fix what stinks if everybody else likes the smell? That's the question of the day. Speaking of teams, today is National Girl Scout Day. And so, as you know, I look for any excuse to eat a cookie. So I brought some Girl Scout cookies. We'll eat those in a minute. Girl Scouting in the U.S. has been around since 1912. Started March 12th, 1912, when Juliet Gordon Low, I'm going to read that, Low, organized the first Girl Scout troop meeting at the first troop meeting in Savannah, Georgia. Hey, there you go. Shout out Savannah. There were 18 girls present. For these girls, Juliet Gordon Low organized enrichment programs, servants projects, and outdoor activities and adventures. Since the time of the first meeting, Girl Scouts has grown to over 3.7 million members. Isn't that awesome? Not only do they have great cookies, but they do great things for the community. The organization's original name was the Girl Scout Guides of America. By 1920, there were close to 70,000 members. 1930, 200,000. And in 2005, there were over 3.7 million members. The motto, be prepared. The slogan, do a good turn daily. Girl Scouting builds girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Amen to that. National Girl Scout Day commemorates the birthday of the Girl Scouts of the USA. While individual troops and regions have celebrated the anniversary of this day, we are not able to identify when it became annually observed. So why do Girl Scouts sell cookies each year? The Girl Scouts have been selling cookies since 1917, and the annual fundraiser helps support the organization and its activities. How cool is that? With that, let's eat a cookie in celebration today. Let me get my other camera up. Also, we're going to enjoy this cookie with some delicious Spark, because why wouldn't we? I'm going to try to move these cords out of your... Oh, man, I'm making it worse. My OCD. What are we doing here? Yeah, well, sorry, y'all. We'll just have to deal with a cord in the way. All right, cookie time. Pardon the box noise and pardon the cellophane, but we're going in. These are the Adventurefuls, which I have not had since I had on the show. And guess what? The only two cookies that have been eaten out of here were eaten on the show. So how about that? What is your Spark flavor of choice? That's another question I could ask. I enjoy pink lemonade. I like the burn. It makes me feel like it's doing something. And I don't know, maybe I need to take a break from caffeine for like 4 weeks to see if, maybe it resets the standard. But let's eat a cookie. If you talk to my team at work, they'll tell you that I eat entirely or drink too much caffeine. And yesterday, they asked me if I had a little more than caffeine because I was tapping my feet too much during a meeting. So there's that. With that, let's take a little time machine back to this day in history. And now that my desk officially looks like it does at home, let me transition back to here. I promise things are not so clean and organized, and behind the scenes are probably not very clean and organized either. In this day in history, in 1861, the Constitution of the Confederate States of America was adopted. In 1918, the Spanish flu first reached America. So this was at Fort Riley, Kansas. 107 soldiers became ill, and eventually 1/4 of the U.S. population became ill, resulting in 500,000 deaths. The death toll worldwide approached 22 million by the end of 1920. So and it's crazy to think about. In 2 years, it killed 22 million people, and we're very fortunate, I guess, that we have, despite the fact the COVID pandemic was really awful, our medical field has gotten better, healthcare has gotten better, which is why the death toll was able to be reduced from what it would have been, obviously, back in the Spanish flu. 1927, the Roxy Theater opens in New York City. In 1941, during World War II, the Land Lease Program began allowing Britain to receive American weapons, machines, raw materials, training, and repair services. Ships, planes, guns, and shells, along with food, clothing, and metals, went to the embattled British while American warships began patrolling the North Atlantic, and U.S. troops were stationed in Greenland and Iceland. At the time, President Roosevelt said, "We must be the great arsenal of democracy." The initial appropriation was $7 billion, but by 1946, the figure reached $50 billion in aid from the U.S. to its allies. I think we can talk later about this, but one of the things that the tariff conversation brought up that I learned about history is that after the war of World War II, there was a time at which, obviously, Germany and Japan had to rebuild their economy. And, obviously, this is post-imperial Japan, post-Nazi Germany. And the U.S. and others essentially said, "Hey, tariff us in an order to help your economy rebuild," and that happened. And so I don't know that we talk about that enough. I also think that sometimes people say stuff about tariffs. For example, Canada just put a bunch of tariffs on China. We put tariffs on China. Canada has tariffs on us that are 300+% or 200 and something percent on our dairy products as they go into Canada, and we're reciprocating with other tariffs. And I'm not saying it's the right call. I'm just saying that there's always more than meets the eye, and it's never the full story is never told to us, the people, because everybody's always got an agenda, no matter who you're listening to. So try to combat that. Try to get your news from multiple sources. Not multiple sources of the same leaning, but multiple sources. And there is a company, I think it's called Ground News, that tries to rate those companies and give you kind of what the bias is. And if you subscribe to their service, which I don't, then they also do something where they say, like, where's your blind spots, and help you find your blind spots. And I hope the camera's not glitching for you guys. It is glitching for me on the computer, and I apologize if that's the case. All right, 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the Soviet leader. In 1990, Patricio Aylwin becomes the first democratically elected president of Chile since the end of Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship. So Pinochet had been in power since the CIA-backed coup d'etat in 1973. Under his command, thousands of political opponents were interned, tortured, and killed. So, again, that was 1990. In 1990, also, Lithuania became the first Soviet republic to declare its independence. The Baltic countries' secession marked an important step in the basically the de-evolution or the dissolution of the Soviet Union. In 1993, Janet Reno becomes the first female Attorney General of the United States. There was a song, I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was like The Offspring or one of those kind of 90s bands. It was like something about fine times with Janet Reno or something, and Life in Chino. I can't remember. I have to find that one. But I can't remember. I have to look it up. This is a great song. I can kind of hear the beat in my head, but I can't quite place all the lyrics. In 2004, there was the commuter train bombing in Madrid. And then in 2011, the Fukushima Daiichi disaster struck Japan. The nuclear meltdown occurred after a 9.0 magnitude earthquake and subsequent tsunami, and it was the worst nuclear accident since 1986 Chernobyl disaster. One thing I will say about Fukushima, I need to go back and study that, or Fukushima, sorry, a little more. I think oftentimes we get very concerned about these nuclear disasters, and there's certainly room to be concerned, obviously. Anytime you say nuclear and disaster in the same word, that's a scary thought. But one of the things with the Fukushima disaster and with Chernobyl is in some ways planning led to those occurring. If I remember correctly, in Chernobyl, there were a lot of like unsafe practices that were happening, one of which was like a control valve indicator that threw the group for a loop because it would only show if it was open or closed. I can't remember which one it was. And then shift change and so on and so forth. There's plenty of data out there and information you can go out and research. But the point being is a lot of times they're preventable if you have the right approach. And with Fukushima, obviously it's not preventable. The tsunami, it wasn't preventable. The earthquake, unless we have some magic power like that Geostorm movie that came out with Gerard Butler. But there was a time at which like a generator could have been used, and it had something to do with they didn't have the appropriate plugs and adapters to make the generator work to keep the reactor running. Now, that was reported. Don't know if that was 100% true, but that was reported at the time, and you're going, okay, these are notes we should be taking, that if we're going to have a nuclear power plant in an area where earthquake or tsunami can occur, that we got to be able to adapt and overcome and anticipate those types of things. With that, in my crazy mullings of nonsense, let's move to birthdays. Okay, let's say happy birthday to Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul. Let's say happy birthday to Sam Donaldson, a news anchor. In 1934, and 1936, Antonin Scalia, the Supreme Court Justice. 1950, Bobby McFerrin. 1952, Douglas Adams. And in 1971, Mr. Johnny Knoxville. So a lot of people know Johnny Knoxville for his time on Jack A, as we'll say it here, just so we're not, using inappropriate language. But I think one of my favorite movies he was in, I believe it was The Rundown. Nope, Walking Tall. He was in Walking Tall. It was a remake with The Rock. Wasn't like the most amazing remake, but it was just a funny movie. He played kind of the nerdy partner or whatever you want to call him, like, smaller guy, sidekick to The Rock in the movie, and I just thought it was a funny movie. They at one point, the story, if you haven't heard it, they're running drugs through the casino, not The Rock and Johnny Knoxville, but the locals are running drugs through a casino. It's kind of like a mob group, and anyway, The Rock busts them, and then they catch one of the guys, and they think he's got drugs in his truck or whatever, and they cut the truck up, and they're like torturing the guy by cutting his truck up in front of him, and it's the whole thing. So anyway, love that movie. Walking Tall, good movie. Johnny Knoxville, decent actor. He also played in a movie called The Ringer, which is probably not allowed to be talked about or appropriate, similar to like Tropic Thunder. Some movies, you can watch and enjoy and never talk about again. In that one, Johnny Knoxville pretends to be special needs and tries to compete in the Special Olympics. And the actual actors in there are, I believe, most of them were actually special needs that were in the Special Olympics. But just the way they play off each other, you can tell that they were having fun and enjoying it. And I don't think anybody that was on the set was offended, but I do think it was offensive for some people outside of the set. But his name was Jeffy, and so some people have used that with me before and called me Jeffy. He was famous for saying, "My name's Jeffy and I like apples." And so I got that one from a couple of friends for a few years after that one came out. 1978, Dieter Drogba, the Ivanian footballer. So happy birthday. Now for the fun stuff. Okay, I get to wish happy birthday to some really important people in my life. Old friend, Stanley Brewer. I know, Stanley, you've been through some tough times recently, but happy birthday. Stanley was always there. I had a phase in college where I was doing a lot of dumb stuff, and Stanley was around and honestly was kind of a rational voice on the proverbial angel on the shoulder a lot of times for me. So don't get to talk to him as much as I used to, but really appreciated him back in those days. Courtney Cook Cooney, a friend of the wife of one of my good friends from work, Mike Cooney, that I worked with in the past. Andrea Tolbert, happy birthday. And then Chris Strong, happy birthday. Karen Bozzella, good friend of the show, good friend of me. And then, of course, the number one on here, old Pops, Jeff Heron, happy birthday. So, or Gramps, as my kids would call him, happy birthday to you. If not for 1.0, you can't have 2.0. So I'm not here if he's not here. And I hope he's having a good day, and hopefully the weather's nice. All right, let's transition to Wisdom Wednesday. It's time to dive in. Let's get practical. This is the segment you've all been waiting for, or maybe you haven't. We've got one viewer on right now. I'm going to bet it's Jenny, but it could be somebody else. In this segment, we're going to dive into some practical strategies to follow up from what we talked about on Monday. On Monday, we talked about fixing what stinks, a practical way to break down a problem and resolve it and build to better processes. But if you're going to fix what stinks, you got to get everybody on the team on board. If everybody else thinks it smells good, everything smells like roses, you're not going to get a lot of traction. And if they don't recognize the need, then they will not try to solve the problem with you. In fact, oftentimes they'll fight against you. So it's very important when you're implementing anything, and let's go back to what we were trying to implement: plan, do, check, act. That was the process we were trying to work, right? We're going to plan a solution. First, do a waste audit. Hey, what's going on? Where am I wasting time? Second, look at that and plan out, hey, how could I fix this? Then the do phase. All right, I'm going to go through that and I'm going to check, or I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to do it in a pilot way. So I'm not going to do it all at once or handle everything all at once. Instead, I'm going to break it down and try to do it a little bit at a time. Then check, did that work? And then act. If it did work, now let's implement it everywhere. And the secret sauce there is that you have to have everybody on board throughout that process. So getting buy-in is not always easy. We just went through kind of what the 4-step cycle is that we're talking about. It's simple, but it's not a solo sport. And so let's look at how we can strategize a way to make sure that your team will be on board as you go through that process. Okay? So let's transition to that. I do want to see, I did not get that stuff out of the way. Hold on one sec. I'm going to get my cup out of the way so you aren't just staring at my Masters cup. But it is, the Masters are coming up. Be excited. We love golf. Shout out to the Masters. Augusta National is a beautiful golf course. If you get a chance to go, go. Don't care if you like golf or not. Just make it happen. All right. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk. And I'm hoping this camera's not going to glitch like the last camera. So people don't buy into the what. They buy into the why, they buy into the who, but they don't buy into the what. So in some cases, you're going to be cashing in on your, I'm going to call it political capital, but it's just going to be, have you built up relationships? Do you have relationships? And if you do, you're going to have to use those. But really, you're going to need to focus in on the why. So let's say, for example, you're trying to solve email issues, right? Like, hey, you're having a problem. One time I worked in a group inbox, right? So we worked out of this group inbox, and the way it worked was everybody received the email. Well, the problem with that is if you everybody's getting the email, who has the ball? That was always the question. And so everybody was having to look at every email. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? And so we said, okay, well, we don't like the group email if we can't know who it's assigned to. And there's different ways to do that. You can look in Outlook, you can do colors, you can do whatever. But the intention was, okay, everybody, let's get together. Do we all acknowledge that we don't like the fact that we have to look through every single email, and every time we go on vacation, we've got thousands of emails piling up in our inbox? Do we all acknowledge that that's a problem? And we said, yeah. And they're like, hey, we really need to solve this problem. That's called group buy-in, right? Like, so we explain the why. Like, what problem are we actually trying to solve? Frequently, what will happen if you don't do that is people go, well, the process is working. Why are we even doing this? Why do we care? Why does this even make sense for us to try to address this issue? And when you start having them question why, and you haven't explained that in the beginning, you've oftentimes already lost momentum. Okay? So it's important you get the why. Tie it to a thing that will solve a problem for them. What problem are we solving for this person? And that can be different for different people. So you have to understand those things as people come in. If you talk about like selling somebody a car, why are they buying the car? Okay, if they're buying the car, they're just trying to get transportation, and money matters the most, or like the cost matters the most, or maybe they're buying it for family and the third row matters the most. You want to understand the why and then present it to your team, and you're really being a salesman. You're hey, let me just hit on the points. And by the way, if nobody in the room cares about that particular point, it can still be a good thing for somebody, but you don't have to talk about every reason why you're doing something. Talk to the relevant points as to why you're doing it. And then the appendix can have the things that are maybe not relevant to those people in the room at that particular moment, so that if somebody else sees the presentation or in the conversation, they can get those points too. But understand the why. Why am I doing this? And explain the why. Okay, so that's step one. Step two. Step two is going to be make it a team sport. Oftentimes, people are focused on the I, like, hey, I have this great idea. Early in my career, I've managed people, been a leader. Oftentimes, I say I, and it wasn't about solving the problem for a team. It was about making myself look good. That is death to a process change. If you're the only one that's doing it, if you're the only one that's bought into it, if it's an I, and it comes from you, nobody else has skin in the game. So the conversation has to be, let's ask some questions. Now, they can be leading questions, but you're like a lawyer, okay? You're asking these questions because you want them to come to a conclusion. Now, they may come to a different conclusion or may come to a better idea, but the intention is to walk this out with your team and say, we have this problem. I've been struggling with my email inbox. It's really crowded, and I really don't like having to read every email. And I go, you know what? I don't either. Like, this seems really dumb. Like, what are we doing? And then you can kind of seed the question, like, hey, I was talking to IT the other day, or I was talking to so-and-so in this group, and they were testing out this kind of group inbox where they kind of assign stuff around. And then they may latch onto the idea and go, oh, that's a great idea. And go, hey, Tom over in the Northeast. Could you talk to him about that a little bit? Maybe let's explore what they're doing and how we can get involved. Now they're bought in and they're part of the team. It's a we, not a me. And you've built a bridge to say, okay, it's not just me, it's me and and Harry here working together to solve this problem. That's how you change the game. Is you get other people bought in, and you will get a better idea because it'll get refined between two people instead of just one. That's another step in the secret sauce. So one, figure out the why, talk about the why. Two, make it a team sport because it's going to be a team solution. And number three, keep it simple and small. So you don't need a company-wide initiative to start with. The way some people do this, let's say, for example, you work at a department store, you work at Target, and you want to implement some new way to push material out to backstock things, right? And maybe it's you want to use a different boat or cart or design or whatever it is for getting those materials out to the floor, the store floor. Well, you don't want to implement and just buy. I did work at Target for a little bit, but they have these things called U carts, and they were like 3-layered carts. Okay, well, sometimes that 3-layered cart made sense. Sometimes a shopping cart made sense. The point being is, if you wanted to implement a new one, you wouldn't want to just buy the new one and replace all the old ones and throw them away. No, you want to start small and say, in this particular department, well, that's where we're going to focus. Not only in this particular department, but this particular aisle of the store. We think that this thing would help you stock better. Maybe it's a basket that sits inside of the shopping cart, whatever it is, but you narrow the focus. For the email example, not every group email needed to immediately change over. Maybe it was just a subset. Maybe it was the highest volume group because they would recognize the biggest benefit because they'd have fewer emails. So the point is, you got to find the pinpoint where it makes sense to make the change, not try to go company-wide or group-wide or whatever it is. Change small, keep it simple, prove the success story, build some momentum, then you get the next small win and the next small win. And we build incrementally towards something big. And that's part of that plan, do, check, act. So in that case, the pilot is also how you get team buy-in. With that, let's transition to the next step. This final step is really tough for leaders. It's called please show, don't just tell, okay? It's tough for parents too. It's the do as I say, not as I do type mentality. If you don't buy in as the leader, let's say you move to a new email tool or you move to a new inbox management style or whatever it is. If you as the leader are not doing this, invested in it, you're not going to get people to follow you, right? As I said, as a joke, a leader without a team is just a man out for a walk or a woman out for a walk, okay? In order to be a pack, a group, a team, and in order to be a real leader, you have to have followers. Somebody has to follow with you. The other thing is you can look at small things that you're doing in your personal life to kind of implement this, the PDCA, and you can model that behavior for others. You can also say, hey, you know what? I thought I was going to be able to do this, but it failed. And that's okay. I went back to the plan phase and I did this different thing. And you don't even have to use the terminology. If you could just talk in generality about the framework, you can get people to understand like, oh, yeah, this person is not just using this here at work, but they're using it at home or they're using it on their own inbox. Maybe only handle it once is a good strategy. Maybe zero inbox is a good strategy. Maybe they do know what they're talking about and how to process, improve, and how to walk these processes out. So model the behavior. And when you fail, admit failure because failure is part of the process. And that's part of the secret is you want to learn that experimentation is not a bad thing and that failure is not a bad thing. Celebrate failure. I would encourage this with your kids too, that don't celebrate failure because of lack of preparedness, but celebrate failure because of experimentation. Like if your kid thinks something's going to work, they try it out, that doesn't work, encourage them. Like, hey, let's try the next thing. Let's try the next thing. It's not called search and development. It's called research and development. So as you fail, share those failures, but model the behavior of plan, do, check, act. And if you model that behavior, your team will be more likely to buy in with you. Talk about it, make it part of the vernacular and part of the vocabulary of the group, and you'll see that they'll move along with you towards this greater goal. And it doesn't have to be PDCA. There's other processes out there or frameworks out there for process improvement, but that's one that you can use and leverage, and one that's simple and easy to remember. 4 steps. All right. And finally, let's go through. Celebrate and share the wins. Celebrate when you have small victories. Hey, our inbox is empty. Hey, our response time went to XYZ. Hey, we got more orders because we were able to serve more customers. Oh, we're getting more quote volume because we're able to serve more customers, because we're more efficient inside the inbox. The dishes have stayed clean 5 days in a row. That's awesome. How did we do it? Oh, well, we made sure we emptied the dishwasher as soon as it got done running and was dry. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Oh, and every time we got done with dinner, we rinsed our plates. Oh, okay. And because the dishwasher was open, we were able to put our plates in. So we never had a pile up in the left-hand side of the sink. And so the garbage disposal was always available. So if anything needed to be ran down the garbage disposal, we were able to do it. Oh, the trash can was always partially full or empty, never totally full. So guess what? It was easier to accumulate all the trash in one place. Everybody was bringing their trash down. That's the way you implement real change, and you build momentum. Okay, well, if I don't have to worry about all the trash is overflowing, what else am I able to do? Oh, I was able to spray the toilet or spray the shower because I wasn't thinking about having an overflowing trash can. And you build this momentum and this culture, but you have to celebrate those wins. And it's okay to celebrate little wins because that's what makes for big victories. All right. And that's the strategy of how to get your team to buy in. Help them understand why the process stinks. We talked about how to fix what stinks, right? Process improvement that sticks. If you want to fix what stinks, everybody has to acknowledge that it stinks. If somebody thinks it smells like roses and they like roses, well, then you got a problem. And so that's how you get your team to buy in. All right. I love you guys. I hope that I explained that well. I hope that you can take something from it because I think you will see that you're good at process improvement and you're good at identifying what stinks. And I hope this gives you a framework to get from point A or point P to point A. As backwards as that is. PDCA, right? Plan it. Do your waste audit. I hope you've done your waste audit in something this week. Just practice it. Doesn't have to be anything crazy or super important. Just do a little waste audit. Maybe it's how much time you spend on TikTok. I have no idea. Figure out what it is for you. Hey, I'm wasting a little time on this, or I'm wasting on that, and how do I prevent it? I had a friend of mine tell me on his Instagram, he set a timer for himself so that he won't doom scroll. And that way he gets a reminder, hey, get off Instagram, and he goes and does other things. So, all right. With that, let's transition to the verse of the day. No, we'll get it pulled up. I can hear the cars driving in. I don't know if y'all can hear it. All right. As we always say, we love you. We want you to be a believer, but if you're not, we still think you can get something out of these verses each day. This is from Jonah 1:17 from the ESV. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So I think we all have heard the story of Jonah and the well. Some people may not have believed it, but then there was a gentleman in, I think it was in Brazil, that just recently got swallowed and spit back out by a well. So it can happen. Um, and I believe the words as they're written. So if we think about the great fish swallowing up Jonah, why did this happen? Well, Jonah was out of alignment with what God wanted him to do. He was not in alignment with God's purpose. I believe it was Nineveh. He was supposed to go and speak to the people of Nineveh, and he didn't. He didn't want to do it. And God said, "Well, we'll give you a little time to think about that. Now you're going to go sit in a well for 3 days and 3 nights." And the way you could, kind of look at this allegorically or metaphorically for your own life is if you're out of alignment with what God's wanting for you, or if you just need a pause, sometimes God's going to send you a way to get a pause, and that's okay. It's all right to wait. God's never late. He's always on time. He misses a few opportunities to be early is a phrase that I've always heard, but he's never late. So with this, what I would say is encourage yourself that, hey, I got to stay prayed up, got to pray, got to stay in God's word and understand what God's purpose is for me. And when I'm out of alignment and I feel like, maybe God's not speaking to me or I'm not getting the reaction I want from the world, because I think this thing is God's purpose and I want to just push until it gets there. It's okay if God answers that with, hey, maybe, hold on, let's get inside the well for a minute. You need to think about this because maybe you're not in alignment with what God's purpose is for you. So just be introspective enough to pray and think about what God wants for you, how you can align with his purpose. And if you're seeing things not moving as fast as you want them to, consider, am I in a Jonah situation where I'm trying to do things that aren't in alignment with what God wants for me? Or also, if you're in a situation where God's knocking on the door and telling you to do something and you keep turning it down, if the rest of your life kind of is in turmoil or slowed down or stops, understand you may not be chasing the right dream. So anyway, I read a lot into that, but Jonah's an important story in the Bible, and I think you can learn a lot from it. Okay, let's summarize what we've talked about today. So, of course, we hit on it is National Girl Scout Day. So if you get an opportunity, go ahead and buy some Girl Scout cookies. I'm giving you an excuse to make a delicious treat, your home today, or bring one into your home today. Despite what your diet might say, have just one cookie if you're not, like having some real health problems, but instead just trying to keep the weight off. You can have one cookie and then put them up. I did it now twice. I'm about to go put those back up and eat some whenever I get back to it. The second thing, we talked about some birthdays and some events that happen. And then we talked about how to fix what stinks and how to get team buy-in. So how to make sure everybody smells the same smell and realizes it stinks. So let's recap those 5 strategies we gave you to get a team bought in. Start with the why. Make it a team sport. So get some early input and get people that want to be engaged. And by the way, empowering people to do something is one of the best ways you can get them to invest in the project, but also it helps them just as much as it helps you, I promise. They're going to recognize, hey, somebody values my work and cares about me and wants me to be involved. So start with the why, make it a team sport, keep it simple and small. Start with a small win over on that, build some momentum, and that'll lead to bigger wins. Show, don't just tell, model the behavior yourself. And finally, celebrate and share the wins. Celebrate them, share them around, and that way other people can be encouraged and get invested as well in the process. All right, with that, I have been talking for a really long time. We love y'all. The next time we're going to be handling how to handle pushback without losing your cool. So that's the next subject for Friday. We may do a podcast between here and there, but as I've told y'all, we're gonna take a pause on doing it daily. So we will get back together Friday. In the meantime, we don't say goodbye. We say see you real soon because
at the end of the day, the day gotta end.